Greetings, comrades. There was a popular joke in the Soviet Union. I'm gonna say it in Russian first. Кому в Руси жить хорошо? Максиму Горькию, Sorrento. Or, who lives best in Russia? Maxim Gorky, because he's in Sorrento. As you can clearly see, this episode is what I promised you, and it's gonna be all about the crazy and weird Soviet obsession with Italy. And to whom else could I ask any questions about this than to the greatest podcaster on the planet Earth? And I should greet him properly now. Well, let's see now. What do I remember from university? Oh, yeah. Salvere jubeo, qui agis magister.
Are you
Sorry.
Are you insulting me in various ways that I cannot understand?
No, not really. I'm just trying. I'm trying to remember those very tiny few things from Latin which I studied in university, man.
Check that out. You know what? I had to do 5 years in Latin growing up in Italy. It was one of those you got to do it. I don't remember anything, like not one thing.
I remember some tiny phrases. Oh yeah, if you haven't noticed already, we are talking with Mr. Danielle Bolelli here.
Hello, hello.
Don't worry, the nice men are not here. So, the first things first, I stumbled upon this whole subject by just finding out that the Soviets made some cars, and the most favorite car of them all was called Zhiguli. And it turned out actually to just be a Fiat, but made from Soviet parts. It is actually right now owned by Fiat, so they just took the blueprints, threw poorer quality parts in there, and then just made them. And apparently, yeah, Maxim Gorky, the famous writer, actually lived in Sorrento for a while, until Stalin called him back and made him do things. But yeah, Stalin called him back, and you know what? The guy actually returned to the Soviet Union, which was the biggest surprise.
Yeah, I'm missing something there. Why?
I don't know. He just got called back as a national hero. He went back in 1928 and died in 1932.
Okay, I guess because in my mind, Stalin calls you back, it sounds like bad things are about to happen to you, but maybe not. In that case, I can see why returning is a good idea.
Well, Stalin would have killed him if he wanted to in Italy as well, but,
right.
It's so interesting. And then there was this period where we were just obsessed with Italian movies, Italian culture, Italian singers, especially Adriano Celentano. I have to admit, I only know his name, and I know that he has visited the Soviet Union. I haven't heard a single song of his. And we also watched a lot of Italian movies and used Italian souvenirs for literally everything. So, I don't know, was something similar in Italy? What did you know about the Soviet Union? And did you even know that there were movies made together with the Soviet Union, like The Incredible Adventures of Italians in the Soviet Union, made in 1974 for one? Extremely popular. It was the first movie shown in the Soviet Union which had boobs in it. Seriously, man.
Nice. Seriously? Well, that sounds like there's an Italian influence right there. I think that's my favorite Italian influence of all. Nudity in every possible context where you can throw it in. That's always a plus.
Wow.
Yeah, no, man, I mean, it's kind of like it was a weird world because I grew up, that's when I was born. I was born in 1974. And growing up in that time period, I mean, it sounds silly because it sounds like I'm, the 90-year-old guy telling you, back in my day. But the reality is that even though it wasn't that long ago, in pre-internet days, you didn't know shit about what was going on across the border anywhere. England was a fantasy based on, being in Italy. Soviet Union, you might as well have been talking about, the Wizard of Oz and some strange fairy tale land because it was pure fantasy realm. Nobody had, how many people did I know personally who had any kind of direct experience? Probably none, or maybe one or something. So the world before internet was really a whole different thing, particularly when it comes to knowing about the cultures of other places. So it's, for me growing up, there were a lot of places, Soviet Union included, where if I really think now, based on my understanding of the world now, of what I knew then, it was nothing. It's just a bunch of stereotypes, basically, and that's about it. That's all you get.
Yeah, those stereotypes is why I'm doing this show. like my
Right.
show. And that's kind of interesting. And Italy was especially interesting because we didn't get that much movies from other countries. We got some French comedies, but I remember a listener of mine telling me that he's seen this movie called Signor Robinson like 3 times already. That was extremely popular. And the
That's
one
what.
called The Ace, I don't know how it's in Italian, because I don't
Yeah.
speak Italian, sadly. And there was also this one which was uh, Rimini Rimini. I don't even know what that means, but that was also
Yeah.
kind of popular,
The,
which is late 80s.
Rimini is a popular tourist destination on the Adriatic Sea.
Oh,
It's classic. It's one of the most popular places for kind of a nightlife and beach life and all of that. It's super packed with tourists in summer.
wow. Well, sadly, I have to say I haven't been to Italy at all. I would love to visit.
Yeah, that part I think you guys got the wrong end of the deal because while Italy as a place is awesome and it's beautiful, while the wine, that kind of stuff is great, Italian movies, save for a few exceptions, were not exactly the best aspect of Italian culture. Let's put it that way.
Oh, come on. That was the only part of the West that we got. And
That's what I mean.
but Italy basically represented the West, and I had to dig up some more political jokes to get in the theme. And one of them was that two guys are sitting just at work watching a TV, a football match, soccer match on the TV, and it's Italy and USSR. And one of them says, "Wow, I would love to be in Rome at this moment," and the other just surprisingly says, "But the game's in Moscow, not in Rome." And the first one says back to him, "Well, that's a shame. I would have to skip the match then."
Yeah, I feel you there. No, in fact, Italy as a country, there's something awesome about it. I mean, visiting, tourism, it's beautiful. Living in Italy kind of sucks. And I think part of the reason why Italian cinema, I'm not a big fan, goes with the same reason why living in Italy kind of sucks, is because it's the kind of culture where it's pretty conservative. I don't mean conservative in a political sense. I mean it in a taking chances kind of way.
Mm.
You have a new idea in Italy, you're going to have 10 people around you who are going to immediately tell you a million good reasons why it's never going to work. And so there's a tendency to frown upon innovation, not to try new things, not to be particularly daring, which really stifle creativity. So, it's not that there aren't some, like, for example, even in Italian cinema, I don't remember, maybe it was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that. I went back and there was an Italian TV series on. Now, I never really watch Italian TV series because 99% of cases, they absolutely suck. They are so bad, it's not even funny. But it's this series called the Romanzo Criminale, which is based on a real story. It was this gang that came up in Rome in the 1970s to emerge as one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the country, starting out from just a couple of kids on the street. And the whole series is so damn good. It's unbelievable. The screenwriting is A+, the cinematography, the acting, everything is amazing. So suddenly it was a wake-up call where it's like, well, so there is high quality stuff out there. The problem is that nobody take a chance on producing, nobody does it. Like that same director, all they have him do now is movies about criminal organization and mafia and this and that. And it's like, the guy is awesome, but don't make him do the same thing over and over again. And that shows kind of the conservatism of Italian culture. You have one guy who miraculously slipping through the cracks managed to do something new and amazing, and immediately the formula becomes having do the same thing over and over again forever. And the reality is he's not going to do anything new, really. He's going to do the same thing repeatedly.
Yeah,
So my feeling is that
this reminds me how actually a lot of people in Europe, a lot of chefs in Europe complain about getting Michelin stars for one, because they build their restaurant to be successful, then they get the Michelin stars, and then they're just afraid to change anything just so
Yep,
not to lose the stars.
absolutely.
And if you listeners don't know what a Michelin star is, I truly wish that you once would eat in a restaurant which has at least a single Michelin star. No, seriously, guys, check it out. It's amazing. But yeah, I don't know. Were there any actually good movies from those times in the Soviet era? I don't know. I really love the old spaghetti westerns, as they
Yeah,
called them, with Clint Eastwood.
yeah, that was the good stuff. That's probably the best stuff that came out of Italy in that period was the Sergio Leone spaghetti western stuff. were awesome. And if nothing else, I mean, when you watch them now, they are slow as hell. You know, the pacing probably worked in the 70s and the 80s maybe. Now you would shoot yourself if you watch them because they're really, really slow paced. But the soundtrack was one of the coolest thing ever. They Ennio Morricone with the soundtrack of all of those.
Yeah, that was amazing. Just
and
great.
I mean, I love that one so much that I even tracked it down. I tracked down who owns the rights to the music now and actually paid to be able to use it as an intro to one of my podcasts, to History on Fire. I used that music for the beginning of the podcast.
Wow.
Because it's just cool. It's just epic and amazing and it's just good stuff.
Well, excellent, man. But yeah, talking about Westerns, over here, which is the interesting part, because you're an expert on Native Americans, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the Soviet Union, we had a lot of books about them and a lot of Westerns, which we got, not only those from Italy. Soviet Union was always rooting for the Native Americans, because Americans were the evil guys, the oppressors, all the time.
Well, in that department, me too. I was all like, you know, when they play cowboy and Indians, who's the freak who decide to play the cowboy? You know, of course, you always choose the Indian. It's cooler, it's more fun, it's more... So yeah, no, that one, I'm completely with you on it.
No, it was just a cultural thing.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this and I'm watching all these Cold War movies. And for one, I was watching, for example, the very, like, Rocky IV, and I was watching that, and I see there's a completely different movie. For me, it's a tragical story of a brainwashed guy who's forced to do this while his real wife and kids are in the gulag somewhere. Like, and
right.
if he loses the battle, then, you know, he's screwed for life.
Yeah. Poor Ivan Drago. He was just misunderstood.
Well, obviously.
Yeah.
But I don't know about those things. It's kind of strange because we over here thought that, oh my God, an Italian person is visiting us, and Italy was one of the few windows to the West. The second was Finland, but Finland was, well, Finlandized by that period of time. But yeah, it's kind of weird. We're interesting was that we bought a bunch of Italian souvenirs, especially for the Moscow Olympics in 1980. Yeah. And all of them got stolen from a promo center. Those were the red Panini-made squeezable cars, and all of them got stolen.
That's messed up. That
and they were stolen by the organized crime because Italian souvenirs were so popular that they just were selling them on the black market for insane amounts of money.
I bet. No, and that must have been quite crazy right there. It's nothing like supply and demand, right? If you make something really rare and tough to get, automatically something that would be like big deal, some Panini stuff, become like a huge important thing.
Yeah, I guess so, but it was always like the Soviet Union had a few things really, really good, and then everything else was just terrible or not available at all, like completely. And I was thinking about this in a way because, you know, especially when it comes to organized crime, when I was thinking about this, me and you, we're both born in countries with, like, you know, Russian mafia and Italian mafia are the only organized crime organizations worth speaking about. Yakuza, go somewhere else. That's the kids' table in comparison.
Yeah,
Sorry, my Japanese listeners, I have about like 12 of those. I don't even know how they. Why would they care about it?
8 are people who live in Japan but are not quite Japanese, probably.
I guess so. I don't even. But what's your favorite kind of memory of living in Italy at that era? And did you actually hear something, like any shocking news, any myths or anything about the Soviet culture at all?
I think what happened was, for me, living in Italy was, I think I started appreciating it a lot more after I left, because then the kind of stuff that I actually enjoyed about Italy was something that I thought it was, everywhere in the world that this is the good stuff, right? I mean, everybody's got that, plus other people may have something better out there. And then I realized that actually when you travel and you go to other places, you're trading things. The stuff that you take for granted is really not to be taken for granted somewhere else. There's something. So now, like the last many years of my life since I've been living in the United States, I appreciate Italy actually a lot more. Traveling in Italy is more exciting, seeing places that, you grow up, is like the place that is right around the corner. You don't think much of it. Now seeing it with the eyes almost of a tourist, because I don't live there all the time, everything is so much cooler, so much more exciting. Even things that maybe I knew a little about, they were presented so poorly. For example, I want to do a podcast series now about Caravaggio, the Italian painter.
Oh,
Now, I
excellent.
kind of knew something about him growing up, and I saw some of the paintings, and I thought, oh, wow, that's pretty badass. But now that actually studying it in a way that's not the way school makes you study stuff, it's so, like, his story, his life story is so wild, it's so intense. There's so many, it's like, it's a TV series, it's a movie, it's so much more exciting than the way it was presented to me. And so now I dig it. Now if I go back to Italy and I get a chance to see one of his things, I'm super excited. Back then, not so much. So I really, like, I think I sort of idealize how life could be in other places, not realizing that it's always a trade-off. The great stuff about Italy, I didn't find it in other places. The great stuff about other places, I didn't find in Italy. So it's always a bit of a trade-off. Now, I'll tell you one that's kind of funny about the whole Italian-Soviet connection. I remember growing up, when I was maybe, I don't know, 12, 13, 14, something like that. It was the first time when they started showing on Italian TV American wrestling. And I don't mean the actual sport. I mean the fake stuff, the WWE, the Hulk Hogan kind of thing.
I know about it, but I haven't seen a single fight of that.
Well, it's hilarious. I mean, it's a soap opera for rednecks, basically. But it's funny. As a kid, I loved it. I thought it was the funnest thing ever. And of course, because it's very much of an American production that's designed to, it's based, of course, on all stereotypes, and clearly they had the evil Russian guy, right?
Oh.
It was a given, you would have to have the evil Russian guy that the flag-waving American would then beat and everybody clap kind of thing. But, this was an American thing that was beginning to make its way in Italy, but it was very kind of a niche, not really mainstream. And then one thing that I found out, the one time when they did come to put on a show in Milan, and it was pretty fun, and I went, the guy who was supposedly the evil Russian guy was born in Italy. Was a guy who just was speaking with a Russian accent, but was completely an Italian guy. It was completely fake. He wasn't Russian at all. And I thought it was the funniest thing in the world. I remember thinking, that's what the whole show is about, right? It was by stereotype and crazy fun, but I remember thinking that was kind of mind blowing.
Wow. Yeah, it kind of shows how the world is globalized. By the way, talking about accents, I comment on my movie tracks, which I do for my listeners sometimes, on how people speak terrible Russian in the movies. How do you feel about terrible Italian in the movies? Is it the same?
I think so. I mean, you hear it, and it's funny sometimes when you hear, like, you could pay a guy $100 to listen to the stuff and correct you a tiny bit. It's like, I was watching, what did I see? Oh, there's this whole TV series called Da Vinci's Demons.
Oh.
Like the whole thing is supposed to be about Leonardo da Vinci, and is all set in Italy. Huh?
Oh,
say that again?
It isn't connected with Dan Brown, is it? Has it anything to do with
Not
Dan
that
Brown?
I know. I know it's no, different one.
Okay.
It's that one was they made the movies about his novels and stuff. This is just kind of a whole thing about Leonardo da Vinci in a very fictionalized kind of way. And throughout the movie, they regularly mispronounce Italian words. And I'm like, dude, it doesn't take that much to have one Italian guy work on the production who tell you, no, you actually put the accent on this other letter, not that one. And you actually, like, how much money are you spending on a TV production? Really, you can't pay a guy a few bucks to just correct. It was hilarious.
Yeah, it's the same with Russian, because they just do Google Translate, and then they just, I presume they sometimes give actors just, the text, how it should sound, without even explaining what are they talking.
Yeah.
The worst Russian ever is on Bourne trilogy. I don't remember which movie, but the one where he visits Russia.
Oh, yeah.
Jason Bourne does not speak Russian, ever.
Yeah. No, that's a given. It's like, I think it's the way it works in all the, like, what was it, the big one? Dances with Wolves. They had the whole thing about Native Americans, and they went all out hiring the person who speak Lakota language, so that half of the movie would be in Lakota. Well, what they didn't explain to them was that Lakota language is spoken one way by women and in a very different way by men, and they hired a woman who translated, and she translated in her way, which means that all the male characters speak with the female inflection, and it's pretty large. And I think it's typical. It's just how Hollywood handles linguistic diversity. Is a bit messy.
Oh yeah, by the way, while we're at it, Glenn just wrote to me. Glenn from the Lesser Bonapartes.
Yep.
He wants to know. He wants to know if Chef Boyardee is Italy's Captain America.
Wait, which guy?
Chef Boyardee, some sort of dude who's apparently on some sort of food in the United States.
The hell is that?
I don't know. It's on food or something.
He's drunk. He's doing crazy talk.
No, I mean he's just I don't know American pop culture references that well.
Right. No, but hell, even I live here. I have no idea what is. No clue. So tell him he's drunk and to sober up and then get back to us.
No, I don't know. There are very slim chances of that happening, man.
Yeah, I figure, but still, at some point, in between binges, he could sober up for 5 minutes.
No, it's okay. He actually drinks quite a little. Doesn't drink much. He works more than I do, man. We're really serious in Lesser Bonapartes now, especially since I got thrown in there. Well, man,
in that case, I changed my advice. Tell him to work less and drink more.
You need to find your booze and work balance, I think.
Yeah, it's quite important.
Yeah, but I don't know. Also, but wait, do you know where the movies, like the spaghetti westerns, were filmed? Because I know they weren't actually filmed in America. They were filmed somewhere else, but I don't know where.
Yeah, it was in Europe. I don't remember if it was in actual, like, southern Italy or was in Spain. It's obviously a Mediterranean place, kind of dry. So I think it was either Italy or Spain, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how they turned Clint Eastwood into an American like icon, and how we kind of got to see some weird things. Of course, every time any foreign movie was shown anywhere, it came with a preamble, and someone had to explain it. We had this arts council in the Soviet Union. I mean, everything that got published had to go through the arts council, and I just sometimes wonder how they actually managed to pull these things through it.
Series. By the way, I just checked, thanks to the gods of Google for you, it was filmed in Spain. That's where they film all the spaghetti western were out there.
So Clint Eastwood became the default American in an Italian movie, which was filmed in Spain.
Yeah, that's globalization for you. And this is, by the way, is globalization before real globalization, because it's not at the time when... it's before the time when now globalization is on steroids compared to what it was in the 1970s or 1980s,
Yeah, I guess so. But is there something you would like to know about the Soviet Union? Like something that you didn't know when you were growing up or something?
I await to be enlightened. Well, of course, my main and favorite topic about any country in the world is women, so... Please do enlighten me about the ways of females in the country.
Oh boy, I'll start with the fact that in modern day Latvia they do all of these statistical researches about the trends in population, and as far as a lot of internet surveys go, Latvia has, according to some internet surveys, Latvia has the most beautiful women on the planet and the most depressive men.
Wait, that does not... What's going on there?
I don't know.
The two statistics just don't match up. Something is off. What's going on? Well, how do you explain that? If you have the most beautiful women on the planet, you better be damn happy. What's going on?
Well, what's going on is that one thing that Soviet Union did actually really good is gender equality here. I mean, utterly complete gender equality, because everyone was supposed to work, whether you liked it or not, and so nobody cared. Woman, man, who cares? You go and work in your factory, and then be happy about it, because happiness is mandatory. And so kind of no one really cared, and our women are, I don't know, I would say they're stronger and more ambitious and kind of crazier than other women right now because of all of this. They kind of like to be feminine because they really couldn't be as feminine in the Soviet era right now. But for one, almost all of my bosses have been female, and our best president in this country, Latvia, has also been female, and our prime minister also was female for a while. And the most influential Latvian politician, Solvita Aboltiņa, who's also the most hated politician, is also obviously female. So I don't know. They like to take control, and then we kind of feel sad.
So you have these super beautiful women who kick your ass day and night. Is that what's going on?
Well, they're not kicking our ass day and night. It's just that you don't want to mess with them.
Well, that's fair. That's no reason to be depressed.
Well, there are some stereotypes there, especially since right now I don't live in Riga. I moved to this very, very small town in Latgale. Like, the eastern border is located right now on the eastern border. I guess this is the most eastern town in Latvia. Mm-hmm. And it's basically in the middle of a forest. When I go outside when I went outside to my job, when I worked there, I just noticed in the morning that some foxes are just digging through my trash outside. And I can see wild boars and deer when I go out to my balcony and have a cigarette. They're just there. And
that's awesome.
This is because I live in the middle of nowhere. But this area has a very special kind of regional thing going on there, that in all the public life and all those public spheres, everyone wants to do business only with men. So that's kind of, women are kind of a bit oppressed here because this area has been a bit more Russianized and has been a bit culturally different than the rest of Latvia. On the other hand, men are supposed to just hand over all of their money to women, to their wives, all of it. They literally sneak out and try to find ways how to keep any parts of their salary. Because even though all the public business is handled by men, once you go home, your wife will just stare at you and say, "Where's the money?"
Damn. Okay, I'm beginning to get the picture here. I get it. Okay. Yeah, I can see how that would be troubling. That changes the dynamics a little bit. But still, I think I could put up with a lot in exchange for the most beautiful women on earth.
Well, according to internet, okay? I'm not saying it's fact. I'm not trying to offend anyone here. I don't know. But there is some difference in women. I mean, northern women and I have found that there are two types of beautiful women in Europe. There's the southern women, like Spanish, Portuguese, Italian women, and then there's like the Russian women. Like, think about, you know what I'm talking. Think about the Russian, the 19th century St. Petersburg lady. That's one kind of ideal of beauty, and then there's the southern, more active and more open type of beautiful women in Europe. I think it kind of splits down in the middle somewhere. In southern Germany, I guess Bavaria would be the point where it kind of cuts off in style.
You know, I was growing up in Italy. For me, ever since I was a kid, I was struck down with this curse that I was very, very rarely attracted to white women, and the problem was that every single woman around me was white. So that made for very slim pickings, because, it was one of those things where I'm like, why the hell do I have to have this weird taste thing where I don't like all the women? It was just terrible. So coming to the US, where there's, especially in LA, where there's crazy ethnic diversity, was paradise for me.
Well, yeah, you have a lot more diversity than here. We have, like, I don't know, about maybe 20, okay, maybe 30, I don't know precise numbers, less than 100 people of color here, black people, whatever,
right.
Every other one. Because, there are basically Latvians and Russians here. We don't get other things. Also, Latvia is such a miserable place right now that even the refugees don't want to come here. Like, we have this quota, and the few refugees that were kind of allocated to us, most of them just said, "What? Latvia? What is this? I can't find that on the map even. Do people have electricity there? I'm not going there."
I'll go back to Syria. It sounds a lot cooler. Yeah, that's when you know things could use some improvement. When the refugees take a peek and go, "I think I'm going back in the war zone." That would be...
It's not so bad anymore. I mean, we are in the EU, and we joined OEDC just a week ago or something. But it's just that nobody knows about my country. I live in the literal middle of nowhere.
I actually had it. It was a joke that I had in the latest book I've written. I have like a gazillion. The whole book is written in short chapters. So there's one of the chapters speak about this guy that I was doing boxing with, and he was kind of like the stereotype of the hardcore, few words, mean as hell, super athletic Russian. So at one point in the title of this chapter, I refer to him as the evil Russian, and then I open a parenthesis and said, well, Latvian actually, but nobody knows where Latvia is. So that's part of the chapter.
I'm gonna do my thick accent now. You not know where Latvia is? We know where you are, though.
I am sure where I just gained lots of fans thanks to this statement. So I'm sure that my visit to Latvia will be well received.
Oh no, man, it's gonna be amazing. I mean, people from Latvia actually don't listen to my show because they know all of this stuff which I'm talking about. But you should really visit Latvia. I mean, we have a KGB museum here. Like a literal building where people were tortured, and they have these very, very small cells. And I went into one, and it was like 6 square meters, essentially, with 2 beds.
Maybe that explained the popularity of Italian movie. Maybe you misunderstood. It's not that they were popular because people liked it. They were popular because they were used as enhanced interrogation techniques during torture session by the KGB.
No, man, those people didn't actually get it. It was like a 6 square meter room, and I just went in there and thought, wow, well, how many people could be there? I mean, there are just two wooden planks where to sleep, so not much more than 2. And then the guide says, oh, it was for 15 people.
Oh, Jesus!
And they had like weird conditions. It actually wasn't like cold or anything. It was extremely damp and hot all the time, with lamps, with huge lamps with extreme light all the time. Yikes. And you had like 10 minutes outside, and outside was in the center of the block, with like this extremely tiny patch of actually fresh air. Completely locked out in a cage, and the guards just staring down at you all the time. That was one of the scariest experiences in my life. And there were smaller cells also, so I really recommend you come and visit this place.
Yeah, how could I possibly miss out on this? This sounds like an experience worth having.
Oh, come on, we have nice things here as well. For example, historical reconstruction and all this ancient stuff. And I mean, you know, I heard this thing as I'm listening to another podcast. It's about the Italian unification, because I didn't know a lot about it, and I kind of drew parallels here, well, on how Soviet Union kind of split apart in our nationalism due to how Italy was formed. Although we didn't have Cavour here, we have Gorbachev, and he did the opposite.
that works as well. Yeah, man. No, this is, it's funny. I've never, it's weird though, when I think about it. I never really traveled, not just kind of on the former Eastern Bloc. I haven't really traveled much in Europe, period. Because the thing was, it was so damn expensive when I was growing up to travel anywhere that, you go, maybe you just stay in Italy, you find your place by the sea for vacation. That's about the extent of it. And if you had any money to travel, you wouldn't want to see Europe because you're already, you kind of know Europe, and it's going to cost a crazy amount of money anyway. So you might as well just go across the world and see something completely different from what you're used to. That's not European at all. So it was, I remember going in very strange direction in my travels, but I know very little about the rest of Europe. I was mostly in Italy the whole time.
Oh, well, travel was kind of different, because when you were growing up, the travel in the Soviet Union happened like this. You had to have a reason to travel somewhere. Yeah, exactly. Then you had to go a permit. You had to go and get a permit from the KGB, and they had your full record on there. Yeah. And there were always, you always had to travel in groups, and there were always people there spying on you, and everyone had to write down reports and everything. So it was extremely hard to go anywhere abroad. So that led to weird things when we actually kind of got our independence in the 90s, and we started to travel abroad, and we didn't know anything at all about how to travel in Europe. Because there were those, like, concerts, bands, dance groups, whatever, traveling abroad, giving concerts, like in the first period. And my dad, who used to play bass for the opera orchestra for 20 years, he was in one such a kind of a dance group. He was in the orchestra. The opera was giving tours. And at that time, on the border from Poland to Germany, united, pretty standard phrase in the early 90s, like the German customs officer comes in the bus and says, well, do you have any guns or drugs with you? Like, do you want to legalize it or something? But people in the ex-Soviet Union took that as a joke, and they didn't understand how Western Europe worked. So one of them actually joked, "Oh yeah, sure, I have cocaine here hidden in my stash." That held them on the border for about a day, and the whole bus was
Yeah.
essentially dismantled.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's funny. I mean, I remember even like for me, I thought it was weird when I came to the United States and they ask you this questionnaire like, are you moving to the United States in order to violently overthrow the government? Are you planning to run an international drug dealing organization? And of course, your temptation is, of course, to check yes to everything because it's funny. But yeah, these guys do not have sense of humor. If you do that, you are screwed.
But I don't even know, why do they ask these things? Do they kind of hope that?
Oh, I know, because who's gonna check it? It's like, oh yeah, yeah, that's what I was here to do. You mean that's bad? Oh, sorry, I didn't know.
Now, could you point me to the closest water supply? This bottle does not contain fluoride and other chemicals. No,
Yeah,
seriously.
it's
What is
completely
this?
insanity. Yeah, that stuff was just always a joke. I always was like, what the hell? Who's doing stuff like this? In another kind of way, though, compared to Italy, in US, people are considerably more worried about breaking the law. Like, I give you an example. Even something as basic as not even just hardcore criminal activity, but like cheating in school. I don't know how it was for you growing up, but in Italy, like if you don't cheat in school, you're seen as like if you are the smart kid who knows everything and you don't help everybody else in the class giving your answer, you're an asshole.
Yeah,
Everybody
exactly the same thing.
kind of like, what do you mean you don't pass me your homework? Are you insane? What's wrong with you?
It was the same thing, really, because
Yeah,
but it always works like this. Because the Soviet Union taught us that way. Because in Soviet Union, you had to cheat the government all the time to get stuff done.
exactly. And so Italy, in that sense, was completely the same. Whereas I came to the US and people here would be, you don't cheat in school. Don't you know that is bad? That wouldn't you rather be proud of the fact that you studied hard and I'm like, are you insane? Do you really believe this shit that they tell you? It's like, that's the kind of, and yet, yes, like people in US wouldn't do that. And it was funny because everybody, all international students, regardless of where they came from, we all cheated the hell out of everything because the whole understanding was, yeah, I mean, you study, but ultimately you have to hedge your bets and, school is not your friend. This is a competition where if you don't do well, they screw you over. So you need to do what you got to do. Whereas Americans were always very hardcore about how, no, you need to be honest, you cannot cheat, and they would get all scandalized. They would be horrified if you do it. And I was like, really? That's just so damn weird.
I don't
But
know.
it's
Yeah,
a
I don't
unique
know.
American thing because most everybody I knew from all other countries, they were all more than happy to.
Yeah, you help a guy out when he's like on a hangover on the exam, and he helps you out some other time. You
Yeah,
learn how
yeah,
to socialize and that practical skills here. The biggest problem
yeah.
here is
That's
that's how we learn business here, over here in the
mhm.
Soviet Union, because and that's kind of also this problem because in Russian there's this beautiful word halyava, which comes from prison terms, prison
Mhm.
slang, which means pretending that you do work but actually not working, slacking
Yeah,
off. Because
yeah,
there was literally no point in actively trying to produce something in the Soviet Union because no incentive to do anything.
of course.
So you were trying to grab as much from the country, but that kind of also leaves some bad things because when it's done on the private level, like in schools and stuff like that, then it's kind of okay. But when when the people in the government who actually should care try to do
Mhm.
that the same, and it kind of grows into the huge corruption levels, then it kind of gets terrible. Because you know what? We have a guy in Latvia called Lembergs who's really compared to Berlusconi.
Mhm.
But again, I don't know. Americans are kind of worried. I mean, Berlusconi hangs out with beautiful women, and how is that a bad thing?
No, I mean that part is funny. I mean, there's something entertaining about Berlusconi, but at the same time, the dude was just so. I mean, just like a low-level clown on so many ways.
Yeah,
There's some of the shit he did that he would look at like, ooh, in there. Like, not even. I'm not even talking about politics or the actual policies. Just basic. Like I remember this video where he was visiting Germany and he had to meet with the chancellor, the German chancellor or some shit. And there's this lady who's waiting for him at the end of, the limo pulls up and it opens the door, and then there's this long red carpet, and then the German chancellor is waiting at the end of the red carpet. Berlusconi gets out of the car and is clearly on his cell phones, and he starts walking around the car for like 5 minutes as he continues the conversation, while there's all the German diplomats are waiting there at the end, just looking on like, I don't fucking believe it. Is this guy for real? Is it really just doing that? And Berlusconi, completely oblivious, just keep talking on his cell phone forever, and eventually is like, okay, I guess I got to go meet the German chancellor. Bye.
I think all of those leaders are like that. I mean, Putin also made German chancellor. I mean, poor Angela Merkel. He's also made her wait like for 5 hours while arriving to dinner or something.
Oh, that's funny. I guess there's something about her that just pisses people off. I don't know, because it seemed like a trend. Unless maybe it was Berlusconi trying to imitate Putin and he figured that's the way to do it. That could also be. But yeah, that's pretty funny.
Do you actually have any advice for, like, I mean, you're a European who's living now in the States, and do you have any advice that America does better than we are here, maybe?
Well, I mean, the thing about US is that there are a lot of crap about US, a lot. But one of the good things about it probably the reason why I do live here is, well, there are two main things, I would say. One is that there's a certain willingness to experiment with stuff. Like, if what I found in Europe most of the time was sort of smart cynicism, people generally being fairly smart, but the result of their being smart is usually not wanting to do anything and being kind of cynical about possibilities and this and that. In US, there's like a stupid enthusiasm, which I like. I'd rather have somebody jump up and down and tell me yes, even to things that maybe they shouldn't, rather than somebody who say no to everything. So that in itself, the fact that there's just more willingness to take chances in US, I like it a lot. And the other thing, I think I like the fact that clearly not everywhere in US, but in places like LA or some of the big cities, the fact that you run into people from literally all over the world is fun. If I look at the roster of the class roster when I teach, there are literally names that come from every single part of the world, no exceptions made. And it's awesome. There's something really interesting with that. You can really get in touch with just about any culture you want. So I think those are the two factors that I dig the most in terms of living in US. There's a lot of other stuff that's less than desirable, but those aspects are really cool.
Yeah, I can understand what you're saying about the optimism thing, because I've been feeling that too. And you're right when you're speaking about the general jaded cynicism. Europe has a completely different sense of humor, for one. A lot of our jokes are terribly dark, way darker than the Americans would want. Because, yeah, in Europe, well, what do you know? We've been fighting over here for all the time, essentially, and the people, like, we've gone through a ton of tragedies and lots of deaths, especially over here in the Eastern Bloc. So yeah, we're kind of jaded people. And one of the interesting things is that one of my listeners, when I actually got some Latvian listeners, one of them actually wrote into my show and said that, oh my God, you're a disgrace to Latvian country. You're not professional enough. You're terrible. You should be more professional. You're making Latvia the laughing stock of the world. You should do better and just stop podcasting and be amazing until you get better. And I'm like, but I don't know. Americans don't seem to care that I.
No, exactly. That's like, that's an extremely European kind of thing. And think about it. It's like, for me, podcasting. If before podcast, when it was radio, if I went to a radio station anywhere in Europe and I would propose, you know what, I want to run this show. And, one of my shows, really, there's no single specific topic. It's about just anything that I feel like talking about, is whoever I feel like interviewing. There's no single theme. It's like, so it's a show about, well, kind of everything, whatever I feel like it. And, I'll speak with this super heavy Italian accent, because that's how I speak, sorry. And
dude, I'm not the guy to whom you should apologize.
And I'll occasionally cuss a lot. So it's like, anyone in the world would have said, screw you, no, we're not giving you anything. No, that's not going to happen. No, it's not professional enough. And yet you put it out there and people dig it. So it's kind of like there's always a reason, there are always a million reasons to say no to things. And again, in some cases, it's probably a good idea to be able to say no to stuff. But ultimately, I'm curious to hear what is that these people, the professional critics, the one who sit on the sidelines and always say no to everything, what is that they say yes to? What is that meets the definition of something that actually will make the cut? Criticizing is cheap. Criticism is cheap. Even when it's good, it's still, the point is, yeah, great. Now you told me why something sucks. How about creating something good? How about giving a model of how to do things, not simply telling people how not to do things? I'm more interested in that, honestly.
Yeah, I understand you, especially, what about the accents? I guess our show, this episode, is just the combination of the coolest accents on the planet Earth by this point, obviously. I don't know. Yeah, I understand that you have the accents. At least your name is pronounceable. People just can't seem to be able to say Andrejsons in any way or form.
No, I'm.
But that again, it's just happening. Your name kind of rolls off the tongue. But yeah, but the criticism part, I take criticism quite well. I mean, my show is like, I'm just a single dude from the middle of nowhere, like in Latvia, with like 2 million people, and 59 of Latvia is a forest. So I don't even know how this happened. But yeah, you're right about all of this. I think the more optimism should be needed in Europe. Then again, Americans should kind of sometimes evaluate the odds a bit better, I think. Just sometimes, maybe,
In which way?
I mean, doing something utterly crazy, which
Yeah.
like risking yourself and putting everything. I mean, doing something crazy is nice, but you just don't bet all of your money on the single spot on the roulette table. You kind of put half on it, and then you see how it goes. I think a bit more careful attitude.
No, I agree. And in fact, there are, the stupid enthusiasm. One of the issues is it's still stupid. There's still that problem that sometimes you're not being very discriminating and saying yes to stuff that you shouldn't say yes to. But still, again, if you're going to pick from people who automatically say yes to everything and people who automatically say no to everything, regardless of the reasons why, yes, usually there's life there, there's possibility. No kind of shuts down everything.
Yeah, I guess so. Wow, it turned into a philosophy discussion. Oh well, it just happens. So, but yeah, but the optimism. Well, as you know, I have a master's in philosophy, and people were just laughing at me when I said what I'm going to study. But I was like, screw you guys. I want to be a journalist, and I know that journalism school is actually pointless.
Mm-hmm.
Every professional journalist will tell you that studying journalism in school is just stupid. So I went to study philosophy. And people were just laughing at me about how pointless all of this is. Well, I don't know. If you study something just to get a job, then it's kind of pointless. If you study something to become a better person, then it's actually one of the best things to study, I think.
Did you ever watch the movie Dragon, the Bruce Lee story? They did a biography.
When I was a kid, actually, I remember we had this one Russian guy who was just dubbing all of the movies as soon as they arrived.
Of course.
There was this one guy who just dubbed everything all the time, and I remember Dad taking me to a video kind of underground video hall where they usually there were usually two movies showing, and they showed some hardcore porn, and then there was Dragon afterwards.
Nice, that's always a good combination. Yeah, there's a great line in Dragon where they go. They are making fun of Bruce Lee for being a philosophy major, and the girl asking, so what are you going to do with being a philosophy major? And the reply was, I'm going to have very deep thoughts about being unemployed, which I thought was brilliant.
Yeah, but this attitude like perfectly represents everything. I mean, I don't remember. I think Plato said that when asked, should you get married, it was like the response was something to the effect of, well, of course, marry. If the marriage is going to be happy, well, then you're in luck. If the marriage is going to be unhappy, well, at least you'll be a philosopher then.
That's funny.
I don't know. All this ancient culture and ancient Rome really strikes me because I'm a huge Marcus Aurelius fan and Stoa philosophy in general. I mean,
course.
that's my way to go, I think. When I feel bad, I just read meditations and kind of it kind of helps you understand how unimportant all the temporal issues are, because you
Sure.
just read it and you think about how the most powerful person on the planet Earth actually thought about things. And that's
Yeah, I
interesting
think.
because actually Stoa was kind of appreciated by Stalin as well.
I'm sorry.
Really,
Was appreciative of what? Yeah.
Stalin. Sorry,
Yeah.
that's how he was utterly stoic. I
Really.
don't know if he read the books, but as far as I read from his life issues, he was really stoic because he never threatened anyone. He was just this, never complained about anything. He was this cold person, and that's one of his weird qualities, that he was a terrible utter monster, but he was an extremely cold and calculating one.
Yeah, and in
Which is
fact, it doesn't.
strange.
One thing doesn't rule out the other, because being a
Yeah,
stoic doesn't necessarily make you a nice person. Being a stoic makes you durable, makes you tough, makes you resilient, makes you, a lot of good things. But none of those are saying whether you're actually a good human being or not. That's a whole different game. If you are a good human being, stoicism actually give you some tools that help you become an even better human being. But if you are not, Stoicism gives you the tool to become an even worse human being.
yeah.
It's kind of like there's Stoicism is like the Force in Star Wars. There is no moral dimension. If you decide to go down dark side, then you'll be better at it. If you decide to go down the other side, you'll be better at it.
Hey,
It
we're
does,
already on the dark side, apparently. We're on dark myths, man.
yeah, right. That's the way.
But no, it's kind of interesting. But well, I don't know. Stalin had many career options. I mean, he could have stopped in being an Orthodox priest at one point. He could have stopped in being and could have been a bank robber at one point.
Yeah,
He was an interesting guy. But I really, I'm gonna figure this out later. But I just wonder how a guy about whom Lenin specifically said, when I die, it doesn't matter who, but just don't let this guy take power, okay? Not this
I don't.
guy. This guy's gonna be a bad choice.
Yeah,
And then
that
things
I
happened.
don't understand. Please actually enlighten me. How did that work?
Um, Stalin had a nice theory saying that he who controls human resources is the most powerful guy ever. He
Yep.
didn't get, like, why the Soviet Union had general secretary as their leader,
Mm,
like in
do
the
tell.
party, because party ran everything. But originally, General Secretary wasn't the leader of the party. General Secretary was the head human resources guy. So
Right.
instead of becoming the president of the party or anything, Stalin
Yeah.
just accumulated a lot of power and kind of made that the position of power. He elevated
Yeah.
the position itself. And
I mean,
then he just gave people more power, put his people into place, and then just played them one against each other, and just killed off everyone and erased them.
that works.
And then he decided that he needed to industrialize the country and purged a lot of people, starved half of Ukraine, but,
Yep.
ruthless but efficient.
Give me a history lesson here. What was the starving half of Ukraine for? I never understood. I mean, I always heard the story, but I never understood the reason behind it.
Oh, that's actually very interesting because before Stalin, Russia was an agrarian country. After Stalin basically built all the industry, railroads, steel, manufacturing, everything, but he had to get the money somewhere because
Mhm.
Tsarist gold tends to run out. So he decided that collectivization would be the way to go, and he just nationalized all of grain, especially in the Ukraine part, which is extremely fertile.
Mhm.
So he just took all the grain from the farmers, all of it, and exported to the United States, to everywhere, and for the money, industrialized the whole country.
Mm, I see.
And he needed to do that in a couple of years, since like
Right.
37. So it was
Like,
a
sorry, I
was a
have to
terrible
starve you
choice.
all, but that's the way to do business.
I mean, the scariest part was how like denouncing everything. But this is why I'm actually kind of worried about America. One thing that I don't like is all this NSA observation stuff, because I can
Yeah.
really see KGB techniques there. Because
Yeah.
KGB didn't actually send agents observing every house ever.
Sure.
They just had a circle of. They just looked at some one dude from a block and said, "Well, we have this nest information. Your sister at one point helped an underground illegal newspaper to produce materials. Well, unless you kind of spy on your neighbors and write bad stuff about them, we're gonna send you to Gulag and your sister and all everyone that you know." And
Right.
they did, and once that guy reports something, because he has to, they go to
Yeah.
that other guy and
Yeah.
make him a reporter as well. So they kind of made everyone in this panopticon system, like
Yeah.
Foucault, when making panopticon and this self-observation circle, KGB run on this. They made everyone as guilty as that, and this is one of the reasons why, for example, we have these the so-called KGB bags, like
Mm-hmm.
the whole documentation of people who were these reporters. And it's 2016 now, and at least in Latvia, they still haven't been published. And that's an act of political weakness of our politicians, because I think that they're just not doing that because they're still in power even after all of this time. At least some of them are. And if those bags of denunciators would be opened, even though they would be forced, and people understand the situation, I think it would look bad on some politicians' resumes over here.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes complete sense.
Because the history of the Soviet Union is dark and full of terrors.
As Game of Thrones would tell you, yes.
And actually, you haven't. Actually, I've only read the books of Game of Thrones. I haven't seen a single episode of the series
Why? How come?
because I think I have this image of the characters in my head, and I think the movies might ruin it somehow.
Oh, well, yeah, if you are overly attached to the book part, yeah, of course books are if you want the books to be it, then of course it's never going to be the way when they turn it into a, like, if people love Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, and they were all pissed off with the movies because they think, oh, it's not exactly the way Tolkien did it. Well, Tolkien was writing a damn book. It's not a But I completely understand, when you fall in love with a certain character, you don't want it to see it 80% like that, but then twisted or changed or something. So for sure, definitely.
Oh, I'm gonna also ruin some books from your childhood right now, because
Please.
no, it's okay. Because in one of my episodes, I talk about how Soviet Union basically plagiarized everything. Italian children's books were no exception. Carlo Collodi's Pinocchio was blatantly turned into a Buratino. That was its name. And
Right.
of course, at the end, he decides that communist thing is the best thing ever. I don't remember who wrote this, but there was this Adventures of the Little Onion guy.
Right.
That was also extremely popular. I think it was edited out as well. And there was basically they just took children's books and just rewrote them completely.
Well, that's the name of the game, right? I mean, that's how few things, even just in translation, most everything translation really means do
It
it over.
wasn't translation, it was
Yeah,
brutally changing everything around there.
just change the whole deal. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, and that also kind of was interesting because I was growing up reading Buratino, and then I read Pinocchio, and I just spent a lot of my childhood just comparing these books. I had to see the original and the other one.
Right.
But I don't know. Educational part and personal freedoms are as a result of growing up and living and hearing all these stories about this oppressive regime. It's kind of interesting because it makes you appreciative of actual liberties, of actual personal freedoms.
Right. Oh, completely. That part is, and in that sense, it's funny though. Sometimes personal freedoms are relative because I mean, we're saying about the NSA thing and the spying and the this and that. It's funny though because I remember even stuff that was just blatantly illegal. The was like, I don't know, technically you were not supposed to spy on people conversation in Italy, was not part of the legal deal. You could only do it if you get a judge to sign up. They still did it all the time. It was kind of like, that's what you do. It's still so just because they don't tell you they are doing it officially, it doesn't mean that they are not actually doing it.
Yeah, but I mean, well, as in the Soviet Union, we all kind of knew what was going on. We kind of so any attempted surveillance over here in Latvia would kind of fail because people know how to evade this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That to me is where it's at. It's not because the government is not gonna do it that suddenly you can get away with it. It's because they're gonna do it and you find a way around it. That's more likely. Because to me, it's like whether they tell you they do it or not, it still happens all the time.
Yeah, people just bring inventions to the table. Like for
Yeah.
example, when the very first computers appeared in the Soviet Union, those are also ripoffs of ZX Spectrum, ZX Spectrum. That old computer which had tapes, which called
Hmm.
everything in tapes. So you know what? And in the Soviet Union, we had a lot of radio amateurism going on. We wanted to catch radio for Europe and everything. So after the collapse, people just didn't know what to do with these radio stations now because we could listen to everything freely. But then they figured out that they could translate programs through those radio waves.
Of course. Oh, that makes perfect sense. That's, I think nothing like a good outlaw underground to stimulate creativity.
Yeah, but that's kind of interesting. I don't know. I hope someone pirates my under the paywall stuff too. I don't mind. I have like 3 things there. I mean,
Right.
who cares? All of these author rights are kind of interesting. Yeah, but kind of. Wow, you made me think actually for once. Crazy.
About what?
About life in general and everything. Then again, hell, who cares? Meaning of life, universe, and everything is still 42, and everybody knows that.
That's the name of the game, right? If I don't get to do that at some point in any conversation, you will be thinking about books and you will be thinking about things of life, and the two are usually interrelated.
Boobs. Yeah, I don't know. By the way, what was your favorite childhood book, which kind of gave you your first thoughts about life?
When I was a kid, what did I read when I was a kid? Well, when I was really young, I think probably I read Tolkien, like The Hobbit or something. And then when I was a little older, still like kind of young teenager, I started reading about Zen Buddhism. I started reading Nietzsche, and I dug that a lot. So on a fiction level, yeah, I think I was digging Tolkien and Robert E. Howard, Conan stuff. And then on a non-fiction level, I think I was digging, Alan Watts, Buddhism, and Nietzsche.
We really didn't get any Buddhism here that much because all the books also had to be approved by the arts committee. So, for example, Plato's Theaetetus or Theaetetus in Latvian, when they tried to publish that dialogue, they had to write a preface explaining how that works into the ideology of scientific Marxism, because scientific Marxism everywhere. Right. Obviously, and those prefaces got like extremely silly because how are you going to explain how Plato works into scientific Marxism?
Yeah, good luck, right? Yeah, you just have to make shit up along the way to justify anything.
Yeah, but that's what they did. But the science fiction, by the way, I grew up reading a lot of science fiction because that was the official literature, official genre of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Why? Because you have to give some hope to the people.
Of course.
At the end, it kind of broke down. Have you read the Strugatskys?
No.
Oh, I highly recommend that one. If you like some science fiction, then those are the first Soviet dystopias. The video game Stalker was made after their stories. It's excellent.
Lately I'm having one of the problems with doing some of the podcasts that I do that I'm enjoying deeply and it's fun and it's great is that I don't have time for anything. It's like, when was the last time that I read a book that was not for research for the podcast?
Oh, same here, actually.
I'm always, whatever I read is whatever I'm doing because it's too much. For one episode, like History on Fire, I have to read, 5,000 pages for one episode or something. That's going, there's simply not enough hours in the day. So I'm having fun because I get to read a lot of history that I dig, but of course it limits some of my options in the short run for getting back to doing other stuff.
Talking about History on Fire, I have 2 questions there. One, how did you pick the name?
I stole it from a friend of mine. He had he did this, Pete McCormack, he did this documentary series for HBO Canada called Sports on Fire. Oh. And I thought, that's so badass, I like it. And then we started talking, and we're working together on a history project. And at one point I just blatantly told him, hey, I'm going to steal your name, by the way. Is that cool? And he was like, yeah, absolutely, use it.
And the second part is, do you know you already have a ripoff on the internet?
Yeah, I saw that. That was funny. Yeah, that was interesting.
Because I don't know. If you're making a podcast, at least make something original happen there, or...
Yeah, that was a little weird.
I don't want to mention the name here because I don't want to give the guy any popularity, but
Yeah, it was strange because we exchanged emails at some point, and I don't know. It was a polite discussion, but it was strange for sure.
People are trying to cash in on your extreme fame.
Yeah, which I mean, I'm like, really, is like at that point, go Dan Carlin route, call yourself hardcore history with other letters, it's like do something, but it's like at that point, shoot for the stars.
Oh, well. I actually stole my name from a pub which used to be open in my childhood in the 90s up to 2000 in Riga. But technically that pub was called Sia, Eastern Border in Latvian. So as I'm doing that in English, I'm in the legal territory. I just thought it was kind of appropriate.
Right, it seems fitting, definitely. By the way, on the speaking of names, and since we mentioned Dan Carlin's hardcore history, I just saw a notice pop up on my computer screen while we're chatting, saying that there was a message from Dan Carlin. So I'm gonna bow to the universe that allows me to correspond with Dan Carlin. I'm fairly happy about that. Anybody who's listening who has never listened to Dan Carlin, just hang your head in shame and go fix this mistake, because Dan is the man.
Dan is like the Pope of podcasting, I think.
Yes, and he's such a nice guy. He's just a good person.
Oh, I don't know. Well, I hope he actually listen. I hope he actually will take a listen to my show at one point. Then I'll just be happy and build a small shrine of him next to my Lenin statue, obviously.
Of course, right with it. Yes, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, no, he's a nice guy. I got to meet him a couple of times. We did a Joe Rogan podcast together once, and then once we just got together for lunch. And he's just just a good human being, super smart and really nice.
Well, it's nice to meet such people. Well, yeah. I think I'm gonna have to quit now because it's 1:30 a.m. here in the morning.
Yeah, you need to go to sleep.
I really need to, man. I just wanted to ask you, as I'm gonna do these, I'm doing movie commentary tracks. Do you have a movie that you would like me to do, and at least wouldn't mind me doing, which would kind of be something Soviet-ish related, at least?
Movie. Let me think.
Because that's the way how I relax. That's my way of getting some fiction done.
Yeah, of course. Since we are talking about some of the spaghetti western and their popularity in the Soviet Union, that would be a fun one. Just especially considering that Clint Eastwood usually has about 3 lines in any of those movies. It's like just does not speak. And the fact that your commentary would be about 20 times longer than any of his speeches in the whole movie, that would be interesting right there.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I speak a lot, really. Just that, I don't know. It's just like my extroverted personality. Sorry. Anyways, it was really nice talking to you. It was a great pleasure, and thank you for this. And yeah, if you ever decide to do anything about Soviet Union or want to know something, call me up. And I hope that you also enjoy this, listeners.
Cool, man. Thanks so much. You have a very good one.
Thank you. See ya.
Take care. Bye.
This podcast is part of the Dark Myths Collective. Visit darkmyths.org for more shows like this one. Thank you for listening to The Eastern Border. If you have any comments or specific details you'd like to know, you're welcome to leave it in the comment section on our site, theeasternborder.lv, and we'll rummage even to the western border to find you an answer. Like this podcast, subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or on our RSS feed. Happiness is mandatory. Good reviews and donations feed the farmers of our kolkhozs in the great motherland. The Eastern Border salutes you. The darkness awaits.